Carly Fiorina, candidate for the Republican nomination for president, former chairman and CEO of HP. Great to have you here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good luck in the election.
Thank you.
So let's use the Trump train as a jumping off point. He did make a list of what he thought mattered. Let's play it and then comment.
Okay.
I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. I would repeal and replace the big lie Obamacare. Nobody would be tougher on ISIS than Donald Trump. I will stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. I will build a great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
Now, do you feel in good conscience that you can disagree with any of that?
Well, I think Donald Trump, who shouldn't be underestimated, by the way, but I think he's hitting on issues that Americans care about. Americans clearly believe the economy isn't growing quickly enough and not enough of employed in jobs they like. They're worried and afraid of what's going on in the world, not just ISIS, but other issues as well. They realize that China has turned into an adversary. They're concerned about border security. These are, I think, real issues. And I think on top of everything else, what I feel out there is something reflected in a recent poll. 82% of Americans now believe we have a professional political class that's more focused on its own power, privilege, and position than on doing the people's work. And so I think they are open to someone with experience, such as myself, who actually knows what it takes to get a bureaucracy under control.
So let's discuss that, because the main criticism of Trump will be that what he's doing is, yes, he's picking on what panics people, and he's then pandering and making big promises, not to overpay it. But that's not the job of a leader, is it?
No,
Everybody knows what the problems are. The job of a leader is to solve them in a way that's reasonable and doesn't set false expectations. Do you believe that you have solutions to these problems that are obvious to everybody?
I do. Let's just say there are lots of politicians who make false promises on both sides of the aisle. But I do think that in order to get the economy going again,
what do we do?
First we have to lift the weight of government off it. So, for example, we know that Obamacare is a failure. We have emergency room visits up. We have health insurance premiums up. We have health insurance companies consolidating. We know that the overreach of the EPA is crushing a lot of jobs. We know that we're now destroying more businesses than we're creating for the first time in U.S. history. We know that we're tangling people's lives up in webs of dependence that encourage them not to move forward in their lives, but to lay back, that discourage them from really using their God-given gifts. We know, for example, that our Arab allies have asked us for all kinds of very specific support to help them fight ISIS. We haven't provided that support. We know that Russia is an adversary and that if we rebuilt the Sixth Fleet or we rebuilt the missile defense program, that would help. And we know as well that our government has become, over both Republican and Democratic administrations, by the way, over 40 years, our government has become increasingly inept, not just costly, not just complicated, but inept. Look at this data breach at the Office of Personnel Management. That's ineptitude.
Well, everybody gets hit by data breaches, right? Target. I mean, I know you'd like to point to government, but the private sector has been just as vulnerable. But I think what's more instructive...
Yes, but they know how many people have been hit, and they know much sooner when they're being hit.
How many people did you hit me on? Is the line for success?
We still don't know. The Office of Personnel Management still doesn't know how many records are affected. They didn't take an Inspector General's report to shut down vulnerable systems. They were told years ago that this could happen.
The problem is clear. The solution is not as clear. And not to cherry pick each one of these things, but obviously you can't say that the U.S. hasn't given what Arab partners want. Nobody's put more money in it. Nobody's given more supplies.
Actually, I can say the Egyptians
You can, but it's not accurate, though.
Actually,
because
it is accurate.
Who's given more in assets, in money, and in time than the U.S.?
I'm making a different point.
Oh, which
the
is?
Jordanians have asked us to provide them with bombs and materiel to fight ISIS. We have not. The Kurds have asked us to arm them for 3 years. We have not. The Egyptians have asked us to share intelligence. We are not. There are a whole series of Arab allies, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Jordanians, the Kurds, who have asked us for very specific support in this fight against ISIS. We have not provided it. I would hold a Camp David summit and ask every single one of those allies, what can we do to support you? They know this is their fight.
You don't think that the U.S. has been asking its Arab allies what they want and providing things?
I do not. I think that's factually not accurate. There are a whole set of things that our Arab allies have asked us for that we have not provided us.
There may be things that they still want, but the idea that the U.S. hasn't given anything, I think is a little bit of a distraction.
Of course the U.S. has given much, but not enough for our Arab allies.
So when it gets to the idea of what would fix government, Trump's idea is, hey, I'm better because I know business and I'm worth a ton of money. So let's take his metric as something that's valuable. And you look at how much money, how much wealth he's created for himself. I think his number is greatly overblown, and that's okay. They have a number out there about you as well. How much money do you think you're worth?
Well, I actually put everything out there. It's not a question of an estimate. I put 2 years' worth of tax returns. I valued everything we own and everything we have.
What are you worth? What's Fiorina Co. worth?
I think it's about $59 million based on the tax returns that I put out there.
Now, that'll be looked at one of two ways. One, the way Trump looks at it, wow, that's amazing. You've been incredibly successful. You did good things at HP. You had differences of opinions about how to run the company. You wound up leaving. But, wow, you've made a lot of money. But to about 98% of the country, you represent this class that you point to yourself as a potential distraction to success in America, where overwhelming wealth dominates the economic landscape for everybody else. How are you the solution and not the problem?
You know, I started out as a secretary. My husband started out as a tow truck driver, and we have been very fortunate. We've been fortunate to get a good education. We've been fortunate to have people take a chance on us. We've been fortunate to have opportunities. We cannot become a country that resents success. We've lived the American dream, my husband and I. The truth is, the more powerful government gets, the more true it becomes that only the wealthy, the powerful, the well-connected, and the big can handle it.
So how do you fix that?
Crony capitalism exists.
Crony capitalism is a great phrase. How do you change, and should you change, by the way, is the better question. The CEO making, you know, exponentially times what the regular worker makes. Is that something that should be addressed?
I think CEO pay, and mine certainly was, CEO pay ought to be voted on by shareholders. That's the way to fix that, because they are invested in the company. But I also think that when you create these big, complicated pieces of legislation and regulation, what happens is the small get crushed. Let's just talk for a moment about our tax code. It's 70,000 pages. So guess who that advantages? The wealthy, the well-connected. All those tax credit and deductions, I can take them. But the secretary that I used to be working in the 9-person real estate firm, those deductions don't help her, and they don't help that 9-person real estate firm. So I actually think that as someone who started in a 9-person real estate firm and ultimately became the chief executive of the largest technology company in the world, $90 billion, I understand precisely why big government advantages the powerful, the wealthy, the big, and the well-connected. And the only way to level that playing field is to challenge the status quo of Washington that has existed for 50 years and begin to simplify and reduce the power of this complexity.
And the trick will be how to do it. This is a good start to the conversation. We have a long time in this election. We look forward to you coming back so we can kind of hash these things out step by step so the people get the best look at the candidates.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, and good luck going forward.